Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug behind the scenes for Wednesday, September 6th, 2023. It's about 10 after 7 in the morning, and I'm in a brand new place, in a brand new city. I've moved from the coastal town of Sumatra, Painan, back to Padang, and I stayed there for a few days, and then I rode my scooter from Padang back up to Bukit Tinggi, and I stayed in Bukit Tinggi for 2 or 3 days in the village near Bukit Tinggi. That's where I was staying before. I wasn't in the city of Bukit Tinggi itself, but I was up in the up on the slopes of the nearby volcano a bit in this small village where I've been staying for a while. And then yesterday I went from that village all the way to Pekanbaru. And the story of how I managed to do all of that in one day is an interesting one, and I'll get around to that in a minute, because I'm currently in the home of my friend Adi in Pekanbaru. So I'm not staying in a hotel right now, I'm staying at my friend's house here in the big bustling city of Pekanbaru. Yeah, what a change that has been, to go from the tiny village, even the small, it feels like a very small town to me, you know, Painan and Padang, and then suddenly being in Pekanbaru. This is a bustling city. The traffic, we arrived yesterday kind of around rush hour, and the traffic was pretty overwhelming. So yeah, how did that story play out? I started off in Padang, as I said. I think the last behind-the-scenes video I shot was in Padang. I was staying at the Wisma Mutiara guest house. Loved that place. I was really sad to leave it because the price was right in my wheelhouse, but a big, spacious room, comfortable. Nice air conditioning, good Wi-Fi. I love the neighborhood. Good people there, like running the Wisma Mutiara, really organized, very professional, very friendly. And it was a shared bathroom, like a bathroom outside my room. I didn't have a private bathroom, but when you stay in a place like that, the first day without your own bathroom, it's kind of annoying, and you think, I should try to get a hotel, with a private bathroom. But once you get past the first day and you just develop the routine of when you need to, shower in the morning, whatever, well, you just leave your room and pad down the hall and use the bathroom there and go back to your room. Once you get that habit going, it's fine. You don't need your own bathroom, really. Once you get used to the idea and develop the physical habits of going out of your room to a bathroom and then back into your room again, yeah, it's fine. Assuming the bathroom is adequate and there's enough of them, that there aren't other people occupying them all the time. Yeah, it works out fine. So yeah, I was very happy there. I could have stayed there for a month or so easily, just relaxing in the town of Padang. I like Padang a lot. Yeah, I really had a good experience there. But my visa for Indonesia was winding down again. A 30-day visa is just like over in a snap. So I was already thinking about my plans for leaving Indonesia, leaving Sumatra, coming back to Malaysia. And that led to some very typical Planet Doug experiences. For one thing, I had to ride the scooter from Padang back to the Bukit Tinggi area and then drop off the scooter. And when I dropped off the scooter, of course, I was going to have to pay for the rental. I rented it for a month, and so I was going to pay for it when I dropped it off. So I needed to get money. So with a beating heart, there's always anything to do with banks and money, ATMs, credit cards, online accounts, just makes me so nervous because everything goes wrong. As the story that I told, I recently was the victim of credit card fraud again. So my bank had to cancel my credit card. So I'm living without a credit card now. And I'm getting these notices now from various online services I use that, your account is going to be renewed now, just to give you a reminder. But of course, when they go to renew my account, they're not going to get paid because I have no credit card backing up that account. So I got to deal with all of that hassle until I get a new credit card. Anyway, the whole thing is a problem. Endless. I woke up this morning and, I was checking email, and I've talked about this a bit in the past, how many scam emails I got, and I woke up to 3 of them. And well, the interesting thing is I get far more than 3 of them, but a bunch of them get caught in the spam folder because, yeah, they're spam. But a lot of them get through to my main email, like they don't get filtered out. So for whatever reason, all of these get through. And one says Apple ID. Your account will be temporary suspended. And I haven't clicked on it, obviously, so it's not open. But I'm just reading the first part of the title. Your account will be temporarily suspended and something else. So they're telling me I have to do something with my Apple ID, and they want me to go, open that email and click on a link so they can steal my information. But of course, the English grammar is incorrect right off the top. Your account will be temporarily suspended. I mean, the English is horrible. You'd think criminals would at least check a dictionary or hire a local English editor to, check their English before they send these out. But anyway, it still, even though it's obviously fake, it still bothers me on an emotional level. Like every time I open up my email account, I see all these and I wonder, I mean, they know my email address, they know my name, and they're somehow they've managed to get their emails past the spam filters. So they know a lot about me, and that kind of bothers me. Number 2 is support@amazon.com. Response required. Your account temporarily locked. And they want me to click on their email, click on their link and try to fix my Amazon account, which of course will just be them stealing my information. Next one, account report at csamazon.com. Account update, billing problem information. Please, deal with, So I get, it's constant. It's just a never-ending attack. And obviously I never open these emails and I never reply to them or do anything with them, but it just bothers me that there's so many of them. So anyway, that's one of the reasons I get so stressed out when it comes to anything to do with banks or online accounts or anything. But anyway, I needed to get money when I was in Padang so that I could pay for the scooter when I get back to Bukit Tinggi. And I grabbed my debit card, my bank's ATM card. And I went out to all the banks in Padang, and every one I went to rejected my card. I mean, there's a million Indonesian banks, BNI, BRI, BCA. They all have these like 3-letter acronyms, and they're big, well-known banks in Indonesia. And there's a whole bunch more than the 3 I just listed. And of course, none of them would work for me. I went from one, I had the scooter, of course, so I'm driving all over the city. And I don't like to use separate ATMs. I like to go to the actual bank office, the bank branch, and I look for the biggest one I can find, the local main branch of that bank. Because if you go to some ATM that's in the middle of the street, who knows about the security at those? And if the ATM eats your card and doesn't give you your card back, you're stuck, and there's no one you can talk to. You're just standing in the middle of the street. So I like to go to the bank itself where there's a nice enclosed room and there's a security guard outside. And if something goes wrong with the ATM, I can go into the bank and at least tell them, oh, your machine ate my card, and they can come out and look at the machine and see if they can fix it or retrieve my card, something like that. So it's just more secure. So I was looking for these banks, the big branch of BNI, then BRI, then BCA, then on and on and on. And every one I went through the procedure, and then it spit my card back out and said, there's been an error and we cannot complete your request. One after the other, after the other, after the other. And it's like, yeah, okay. That's very typical for my life. But then I happened to ride by what looked like a big, brand new Maybank building. I'd actually seen it earlier when I rode down this road looking for banks. But when I saw it, Maybank, it's like, oh, Malaysian bank. I think it's the biggest bank in Malaysia. It's the one I always use in Malaysia when I'm there. And I thought it was like some sort of an international corporate building. I didn't think it didn't look like a bank that was open to the public. So I just kind of went right by it. But after all of the local banks, the Indonesian banks, rejected my card, and I saw that Maybank building again, I thought, maybe they have a Maybank ATM in that building. So I pulled over on my scooter, I went in, and to my delight, they did have an ATM, and it was inside a beautiful room, you know, new building, new construction, and the ATM was securely inside an enclosed room with security guards outside, things like that. And the ATM looked almost futuristic, because the ones I was using at the Indonesian banks were all relatively old, kind of old clunky machines. And you press down on the buttons, they don't really feel like they're going down all the way. They're very mechanical and kind of clunky and old and a little bit broken down. But this Maybank was brand new, and it was a modern, state-of-the-art ATM. Beautiful display. Because yeah, in the Indonesian banks as well, a lot of the screens just had like neon green lettering, you know, almost look like you're looking at an old cathode ray television screen or something like that. But this Maybank building was much newer, more modern, and the ATM was like a spaceship. Big, beautiful buttons, and everything was responsive, everything was gleaming. And to my delight, it worked. Everything just flowed flawlessly, and it allowed me to withdraw as much money as I needed for that transaction. The Indonesian banks are all restricted. You can withdraw a very small amount at a time. So if you need to withdraw like 3 or 4 million rupiah, 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is you need, you have to do it over and over and over and over again, and withdraw a little bit of money at a time. And of course, every time you do that, you're forced to pay transaction fees. So it's just a horrible thing. But with this Maybank, they had like a far larger withdrawal limit, like more than I needed for my scooter rental. So I could do all of this in one transaction, and I pushed all the buttons, and everything seemed to be working, and I'm holding on to the machine as I always do, waiting for that happy vibration, because you know, the machine starts spinning and counting out the money, makes this wonderful vibration and this thrumming sound. It's like, oh yes, it's counting out my money, it's going to work. So one good thing is going to happen today. And then it actually gave me the money. So that was a very typical Planet Doug experience. But yeah, it took me a good chunk of the morning, if not the whole morning, just to do this. And I was lucky that I got any money at all, and it didn't turn into like a multi-day adventure just trying to withdraw money. But yeah, everything worked out in the end. So that was kind of cool. And with money in hand, I got ready for my trip the next day, because I rode my scooter from Padang back to the Bukit Tinggi area. And that was a beautiful ride. I woke up pretty early in the morning. I was trying to get on the road at dawn-ish, and I managed it. I was on the road pretty much right after dawn, so the roads weren't busy yet. The sun was just coming up. The world was nice and cool. You get that beautiful early morning light. And I hemmed and hawed about how to return to Bukit Tinggi, because I could go by the main highway, which is the much faster route, or I could take the scenic route, going back up to these lookout points I visited before, and then to a lake. And when I came down, I took that scenic route, and I went along the northern shore of the lake. And I thought, going back, I could make it a different trip by scootering along the southern shore of the lake. And that's what I did this time. And I didn't make a big adventure out of it. I didn't go exploring. I didn't stop in a lot of places. I was shooting a little bit of video along the way, but nothing too in-depth or anything. I just sat on the scooter and rode. And yeah, it was a really great trip. Still took quite a long time. I mean, on the scooter, I always feel like I'm going at rocket ship speeds. But then you look down at the odometer or the speedometer, and it says, 30 kilometers an hour. I'm maxing out at 40 kilometers an hour on these tiny roads that I'm on. And so you're not covering a lot of ground when you're driving at 30 kilometers an hour. So it took a lot of hours to get back. So I got back to the village around noon. And once I was there, I quickly unpacked the scooter. I went back to the village because my bicycle and all of my cycling gear was still there at this house, Addy's house, his family's house in the village. So I unpacked and settled in there. And then over the next couple of days, I prepared for leaving. And, oh, I skipped by a story, because at that time, while I was still in Padang, I was trying to decide how I wanted to travel, because I was going to go back to Dumai on the coast and then take the ferry from Dumai to Malaysia, either to back to Port Dickson, where I left from long ago, or to Malacca. And I was trying to decide if I had enough time or if it made any sense to ride my bicycle back to Dumai, or perhaps take a bus. So with the time that was available to me, and because of the terrain, it made a lot more sense to take a bus, because between me and Dumai at that time there were a lot of mountains, and for me to cycle up those steep mountain roads, you kind of need some conditioning beforehand. So normally, you'd ride the bike for 1 or 2 weeks on flat kind of terrain just to get into the rhythm, because I've been off the bicycle for months now again. I haven't been cycling very much, hardly at all. I certainly haven't been bike touring with a full, load of luggage on the bike. So I wasn't in shape for cycling all over again. And I figured I could, ride up these mountain roads, that's pretty common for me, but I would need like a week of cycling just to get conditioned and get in shape, and then start climbing. Do the most difficult thing. But the way the geography is laid out, I would be climbing steep mountain roads on the very first day. I would just get on the bike and I thought I wouldn't be able to do it. I thought I would end up damaging my knees in particular if I tried to do that. I'd need to ease into these things. So I thought, okay, it probably makes a lot more sense to take a bus. And I sent a message to a friend of mine, Chatty, in the village, actually, and asked him, does he know about any... I'd sent out other feelers. I've been asking people about the possibility, are there any buses to Dumai from Bukit Tinggi, and can I put a bicycle on one of those buses? Like, is this a possibility? And me being me, I guess I'm kind of out of touch with the modern world. They started sending me links to the websites for all these bus companies. And for some reason, it never even occurred to me that these bus companies would even have websites. And it turns out these bus companies have websites, and they have WhatsApp communication. So on their website, they have their WhatsApp number, and you can reach out to them, and they have someone there who is their local English speaker, and they put you in touch with the representative of the bus company who speaks English, and then you can ask your questions on WhatsApp. So I did that. I spent a good chunk of a day doing that, and I think I have some notes written down about this, because I want to get the actual time straight. Because I spent an entire day on WhatsApp trying to find out if I can put my bicycle on a bus. And the first message got sent at 9:07 in the morning. The very last message was sent at 6:13 in the evening. So we're looking at 9 hours. I was on WhatsApp for 9 hours communicating with these bus companies, asking my questions. And the question I opened with, I asked all day long, the same question over and over and over again. Can I put a bicycle on the bus? After 9 hours, endless communication going back and forth, at the end of the day, I still didn't know. Nobody would answer my question. No matter how many times I asked, how many different ways I asked, they would not actually say yes or no. Our conversation just went around and around in circles, and they would talk about this, where the bus goes and how it does this. And one guy was saying, it's probably better for me to take a private car, and he was saying that they can provide a car for this much money, and and you can do this, you can do that. And I would just keep coming back again and again. Okay, that's great, I'll think about that, but the bus you told me about, the bus that goes from here to here, is it possible to put a bicycle on the bus somehow? Can you put it on the roof in the luggage compartment? How would that work? Is it a possibility? And then he wouldn't answer. And then we went around and around, and I asked over and over and over again, 9 hours of this, and nobody would tell me yes or no to my bicycle question. I just gave up. And this happens to me all the time as well. I can never figure this out. Am I that bad at asking questions? I don't think I am. You know, I reviewed our conversation online, and it looks like I'm asking a very simple question, but whatever, no matter how many times I ask, couldn't get an answer. So I just gave up on that, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to ride my bike. You know, the heck, like, yeah, to be honest, that's how I became a cyclist in the beginning, you know, whatever, you know, how many decades ago it was, when you're doing a bit of traveling and you're going to the local bus stations and trying to get from town to town by bus or by train or whatever, you run into these barriers, you know, whether it's the language barrier, cultural misunderstanding, just general confusion. I found it so frustrating and time consuming and difficult to travel by local transport. You know, one day I'm just going to ride a bike, and I started riding a bicycle. So you can control everything. You don't need to go through all this. And that's actually how I started doing bike touring a long time ago, just to avoid all these troubles with bus companies and train stations and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's kind of funny. So anyway, I couldn't get an answer, and I decided, okay, I'm just going to ride my bike to Demai. I'll figure it out. And I'll leave as early as possible so that I can go as slowly as possible and have rest days along the way. And I was working out a whole schedule, a whole itinerary, exactly how many kilometers per day, where I'll spend the night. And I was getting all this figured out. And that's when I decided, yeah, I got to get back to the village like as soon as possible. I was going to show up, put my bike together, and the next morning I was going to hit the road and start cycling back to Demai. So that was my plan. But then I was online and chatting with Adi. He's on WhatsApp all the time. And yeah, we were just chatting about everything. And I told him about my plans, how I decided I had trouble finding a bus. And I decided to ride my bike back to Demai. And that's what I was going to do. And then he said, well, I'm driving that way on Tuesday. You know, come with me. You know, we'll put your bike in the back. He's got an SUV, and he said, yeah, we'll just, you know, the rear seat goes down flat, throw your bike in the back, and, you know, just come with me. And he enjoys having company on the road. He does this ride all the time. He drives around West Sumatra all the time for his work. And, yeah, he likes having company in the SUV, so it was like, yeah. So that's what I ended up doing. All of my plans that I worked out, failed plans to take a bus, and then plans to ride my bike, yeah, canceled all of that. And I thought, oh yeah, let's do that. And you know, that gave me a couple of days in the village to get ready. And it turns out I needed those days because up at that altitude, it's extremely wet. It's very, very damp. It rains all the time up there. On the slope of the volcano, the clouds come over. So even if it's sunny elsewhere, it's always raining and cold and damp there. And it turned out that that is a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It is a very wonderful place for mold and fungus, because it's like the perfect environment for mold to grow. And that's why you see in villages like that, they'll have the windows and doors open all the time just to get air flowing through the place, just to keep it as dry as possible. Because if you close the doors and things like that, close the windows, you know, it's just mold will grow everywhere. And I had left, you know, my bicycle and my pannier bags and my bicycle trailer, all of my cycling gear, I left it there, you know, while I was out going around on my scooter and doing other things. And mold happily made itself at home. You could just feel it. It was everywhere. Like you could see it, patches of green mold. And so I had to spend a couple of days just cleaning everything. So day one, was cleaning. You know, I just got a bucket, soapy water, and then everything that I have, whether I could see the mold or not, I just wiped everything down, everything I have, laid out all of my possessions and just cleaned everything to make sure I got all of the mold and the fungus off. And that, yeah, that took a whole day to do practically. And then the second day, once everything was better after that, I could feel it. Because when I first got there, you would touch things, and it just had this sticky, wet, feeling to it. It was really, really nasty. And then once I cleaned everything, I was like, oh, everything felt dry and felt good to the touch. So I was very happy about that. But then the second day, I had to dismantle the bike. I had to pack up and somehow prepare the bike, for the trip. Because I do find with people in general, they overestimate how big their vehicles are, and they underestimate how big and bulky a bicycle is, particularly a touring bicycle, which tends to be quite longer. You have like a long wheelbase, and then you have pannier racks and fenders, and it's got an upright sort of geometry, so the handlebars are high, the seat is high. It's a big, bulky thing. And I've had the experience in the past where people thought, oh, we'll just toss your bike in the back. But of course, it doesn't fit. So I spent the day packing up, putting all my gear as well as I could, packing properly. And then I took the wheels off the bike, took the fenders off the bike, took the racks off the bike. And, you lower the seat, and then you do this. I took the pedals off. Because, also when you put your bike into someone's vehicle, if it's greasy or dirty or it has sharp edges, it can do damage. So what you want to do is, take the pedals off, clean the whole bike, of course, and then you take plastic bags and wrap up the derailleur and the chain, make sure everything that might have grease on it is covered up. And so you just try and make the bike as small and compact as possible, take away all the sharp edges, and then cover up anything that might be dirty and clean the whole thing. So I spent the whole day doing that. Got everything as ready as I could. There were a couple of things on the bike I couldn't remove, unfortunately. I try to stay on top of these things where all the bolts, I try to maintain things so that periodically I will remove the bolt, put grease on it and put it back in. But I guess, yeah, things got a little bit out of hand, and a couple of things, the bolts had rusted into place. And then when you try to remove them, you use all your force, and then you end up stripping it's an Allen bolt, So one thing in particular, I stripped the bolt, and then I wasn't able to remove it, which is a bit of a pain. But in the end, I did the best job I could, put the wheels inside a bag, and yeah, everything worked out pretty well. I had a lot more gear than I wanted to have, that's for sure. And then the next morning, Addy showed up. He was down in the city of Padang, and then as he was driving back to Pekanbaru, he stopped off in the village, because that's his family's, his extended family's home where I was staying. And he stopped off there to pick me up, and then loaded all my gear in the back of the SUV, and we rode here. Got here, as I said, in the evening. It was dark, I think, as we were arriving, so it would have been 6:30-ish, 7-ish maybe when we got here. And I must say that during the drive, I was very glad not to be cycling, because I mentioned the main problem for me was not having enough time to get in good enough physical shape to ride up the mountains. I didn't have time to get, to condition myself for cycling. But the other problem is just how dangerous it is. And I was reminded of that on our ride yesterday, because that road is extremely narrow, just winding constantly, no matter, whether it's going up or going down. It's just winding, very tight corners, and loaded with trucks, like big monster trucks, heavy traffic everywhere. And oddly enough, even adding to the danger, if I were riding my bike on that road, it would have been unnecessarily risky and dangerous, I think. But also, I think I would have just felt uncomfortable that I was inconveniencing everybody around me, because the truck drivers in particular, they're facing a very difficult task. I mean, it's not their fault that they're driving like a massive dinosaur truck on a narrow mountain road, and that all the cars and motorcycles get stuck behind them, you know, because the trucks are moving quite slowly uphill, and then dangerous curves, and everybody's trying to pass them, and it's a total circus sometimes. You know, again, it's not their fault that they're, you know, in this situation and creating these dangers. And then I can only imagine these truck drivers, you know, dealing with these conditions, and then up on the road ahead of them, they see a cyclist like me, you know, just, you know, grinding my way up, and they're like, oh, for Pete's sake, now we have to get around this guy? Like, what insane person is riding a bicycle out here? So now these trucks on top of, you know, the narrow roads and the tight corners and everybody trying to pass them all the time, now they have to get around me safely, which would cause even more, you know, dangers for the person behind them. So I was kind of glad I wasn't riding a bicycle. I would feel guilty the whole time because everybody would have to pass me. You know, I would be the slowest thing on the road, so every single vehicle on the road would have to pass me at least once, right? So it's just like, yeah. Anyway, it was much better to be comfortably ensconced in the front seat, letting someone else, an experienced driver, do the driving rather than being out there on my bike. Yeah, that was quite an experience. So here I am in Pekanbaru, which is only part way to the town of Dumai, and I hemmed and hawed about the getting from here to Dumai, that the mountains are now behind me. Even from here to Dumai, there's a lot of climbing. The road is surprisingly hilly, because I rode my bike on that road one time already. So it's not an easy ride at all, but it could be done, and I have enough days to do it. But it's a even busier highway. Like the road that we went from, you know, Bukitingi to Pekanbaru, it's a mountain road. And then the road from Pekanbaru heading towards Dumai, it's the same highway that goes all the way to Medan. So it's the major thoroughfare of Sumatra. And there's far more truck traffic on that section of highway than on the one we did yesterday. And but right from the beginning, Adi said, no, I'll take you the whole way. He said, I'll drive you to Pekanbaru, and then we'll stay there for a couple of days. You know, you can stay at my home. And then, you know, after a couple of days when you're ready, I'll you know, it's not that far for him to drive, he said. And he says, yeah, you know, we'll wake up in the morning and I'll drive you to Dumai, drop you off there, and you can get on the ferry. So that is the plan. And my plan is actually go to Dumai a few days early. I want to stay there a couple of nights because when my visa expires, I have to take a ferry out of the country. But of course, if there happens to be bad weather, the ferry could be canceled. You know, it's a boat, so anything could happen. So I don't want to wait until the very last day of my visa. I want to try to get on the ferry, you know, at least one day before, maybe 2 days before my visa expires. And then if something goes wrong, I have another shot at it. You know, I'm not going to end up overstaying my visa, because that would be a big problem, and I don't want to deal with that. So yeah, I think that brings the story of me up to date in terms of what's going on. And I think that is about it this morning. I'm going to settle in here, fire up my computer. Now I have an internet connection while I'm here, so I'm going to be uploading some videos and making a thumbnail for that video, posting it to YouTube, that kind of thing, and editing some more video. And yeah, just gonna make another cup of coffee, settle in here, relax, do some YouTubing, stuff like that. And so, yeah, that's it for now. And a little bit of a Planet Doug update, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good day wherever you are.